MVP, the Mo Vaughn podcast, powered by Vaughn Sports Academy and Perfect Game. Mo, I say it every episode, but we get the best guests around here. Greg does a great job booking us all the time. We got another really good one with a great book that just came out. Ken Davidoff joining the show today. Ken, how are you feeling, man?
I'm great. Just thrilled to join you guys.
Ken, how are you? Everything good, man?
I'm good, Mo. It's great to see you. It's been a long time.
I just heard you're in New York, so you're just in the city.
I'm in Manhattan, sir, in the Upper West Side.
Just waiting to get that season started, aren't you?
Oh, we got 9 days.
Yeah.
How far do you guys go back? How long have you been acquaintances, known each other? How long ago?
I mean, I don't want to overstate this relationship. Right? I started covering the game in '95, but obviously couldn't cover Major League Baseball in that era without crossing the path of Mr. Mo Vaughn. And whenever we did cross paths, it was a pleasure.
I appreciate that. I've always said, you can, us, the media guys can still do a great job and still have a great relationship. So that's always good. Work is work, but people are people.
Before we get to the book, how have you seen the relationship with media and athletes change over the years, Ken? Because I think, I started out, I wanted to be a newspaper writer. By the time I got out of college, they were gone, basically, right? There really wasn't any jobs left. So I went into radio and I was a beat reporter for NBA, MLB, NFL. And even just in the time I did it, I've seen such a major shift in how the sport's covered, the relationship between reporters and players. How have you seen that change in your time?
Yeah, well, that's a great question and an easy answer. In my humble opinion, it's gotten much harder to establish those bonds and that trust. And as Mo said, it was my job to be critical at times. But if I did it in a way that was, let's say above the belt, where, if I went to Mo, it's like, Mo, man, I think you screwed up. Like, I'm going to have to write it this way. Mo might not have been happy with me, but hopefully there was some respect, for that line of communication. And I could go to sleep that night as the journalist, like, all right, well, this is going to stir up some trouble, but I've already covered my bases by giving people a heads up. And because there's less access than there used to be, because frankly, the players and the leagues have their own options to get their messages out. They don't need the mainstream media as much. The strength of that relationship has dwindled dramatically.
Yeah, but I think, playing in Boston, there was a clear understanding that the media was part of the process and needed to be part of the process. I don't really know where that's changed. I don't know why. I don't know if or what the added mindset is, but I hope the mindset should be, if I'm not playing well, we're going to write about it. If I'm playing well, we're going to write about it. If I do something, say something stupid, we got to write about it. If I, if I deserve something that is positive, we're going to write about that. But I think sometimes today you look at us as athletes, we're trying to control the narrative, throughout all points. And I think that's where the disconnect comes is I know, I'm go on the road for 2 weeks. I'm, run for 17. You're going to get booed when you get home going to Fenway Park. That's part of the process. And I don't think that should change. And I even hear now in certain situations where there are actually human resource management teams that are with the clubs to take care of if a coach or a player, if a coach comes down on a player too hard or an article is written, man, we're not making strong people and strong men when we do that. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I think, I do think that every kid grows up with a camera in their face now, right? Everybody's used to being on camera. Everybody's used to being in content, let's say. But I do think that we're maybe overly sensitive as a society to any type of constructive criticism. How did you balance that in your career, Ken, of like, all right, I got to write something here. I know they probably won't like it. I'm going to go let them know. But how did you know where that line was to where, hey, I know that at least I'm being fair about this?
Yeah, well, another great question. I think that line, I developed instincts over time. I covered the game full time for 27 years. I still do a little bit freelance. And I think at first, I know I made some mistakes. I was either too hard or too easy on people, depending on the circumstance. But I think as I became a veteran writer, I just kind of had this internal meter. And a lot of it was, all right, well, what beyond just the performance on the field, how is the player dealing with that? How is he talking about it? And I would talk to his teammates and his coaches and from up, like, what are you seeing here with this guy? So I would do my own due diligence to figure out, all right, like how much rope does this person deserve? How much is he taking accountability for his struggles, or how much is he not? So that kind of evolved throughout time.
Mo, did you ever have teammates or people you played with that you were like, man, they just got a raw deal by the media, or like maybe people were a little too light on him at times? Was there you don't have to name any names, obviously, but was there guys you're like, man, I just don't think that how he's being covered is exactly how this guy should be covered?
People always ask me, what was the toughest media market? And I always say Boston. And the reason being is, New York is very, very tough. But you got two newspapers combining, competing for a story. So that kind of like nullifies some information, and, it puts people in its proper position at times. But when I was playing with Boston, you had two newspapers, the Herald and I forgot what the Globe.
Yeah.
And they would be in there competing for a story for one team. And a lot of people got a lot of raw deals because it was like, and we had 24, man roster. And we had 34, 35 reporters. And everybody's looking for that conversation that they're trying to whisper about and I think a lot of times things came out wrong. I feel a lot of times things were just said sometimes just, as setups to create certain mantras and attitudes and, pushing the fans in certain directions. But damn it, it's part of it, man. Like you can't run from that. You're never going to outpace the media. And once you learn that, and I didn't learn it. I always thought that, if I told the truth or if I came out with the information, man, I'm going to be right and everybody's going to understand what I was saying and I'm going to be the guy and I'm going to set it straight. It never works. So, if I were, in the information department as a club or an organization, the first thing I would tell the players is, no matter what you say, you're never going to be right. So you need to figure out what the words are that are going to best benefit us, me, your organization, yourself, your family, what you do, how you do it, and your team. And I think that's where the information is coming off wrong, in my opinion. You can't beat these guys. We're always going to be there. Even listen, there's going to be some type of impasse coming out. You know what's going to happen? The owners who have enough abundance of money, we're never going to get called out like the players are because we're the ones that are up front and trying to do the right thing and getting things, getting our points across. Well, the owners are trying to close their books with, and really don't want to tell any information. So it's like, I just think the education has to be, try to keep your mouth closed. Say what you need to say. Put yourself in the proper perspective. Realize you're going to take some from fire. You're in the big leagues. You're in the major leagues. You're making a whole hell a lot of money. You're going to take some bullets, but ultimately just do the right thing and things will pass. I think that's the only way to go about it. And I wish I had done that. I said, I wish I had done that. I didn't do that. I was fighting the fight, man. I thought. And to this day, I thought, I wish I had taken a different path.
Do you think it was just youth for you, Mo? Like, was that just, you had to grow into that mindset?
I think, and Ken, you could talk about this a little bit. I don't think us as athletes, there needs to be some type of course we go through that understands what it means to run a team, what it means to have a payroll, what it means to have expense, what it means to what do you want? What do we want the fans to know? There's a big business that goes on underneath this whole game that we play 162 games. And I think if the players really understood that and knew that, I think they would understand and be able to work around what goes on every day, between the fans, the media, and the team. And it would be beneficial for them to understand that.
I agree, Mo. And I do think in general, there's been a lot more efforts by the team to educate the players. And I know
Good.
specifically with media relations, like
Good.
that has really evolved over, my 30 years around the game. But yeah, that would be interesting, Mo, to have like the owner come in or the team president, spring training meeting and just kind of go over the things you're talking about. I think that'd be very beneficial.
I mean, I was very lucky afterlife, though. After I retired, I got into affordable housing in New York City, probably one of my greatest feats. And what I learned was, running a company, everybody got to be on the same page. Can't have any outliers. We got to be speaking the same mantra. We got to be all trying to, pull together. And and when you don't, those people that are not, towing the line, you move on. And I see, I wish I had known that before, I started playing it. I would have been a better player for the organization if I had known that.
Ken, I'm glad Mo brought that up. Obviously, there's the looming stoppage of play coming. Everybody knows it's about to happen. What are from a high level, what are your thoughts on that? And then I also would love to find out, because I always found it fascinating when I'd be doing talk radio, is what high percentage of people immediately side with owners in these situations, right? It almost seems like people just, that's where they gravitate towards first. Like, why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because, fans see these players play, and fans would say, I would do that for free, and, how is
and the salaries are posted.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
How is
That's a good point.
making 8 figures? That's ridiculous. But of course they don't. Yeah. But they don't envy the owners in the same way, right? Like the owners sitting in a suite and, shaking hands with ticket holders, whatever the owners do. They're like, I would do that for free, because they wouldn't, but I do think, Will, that the feelings have evolved. I remember that I covered the last it wasn't a work stop. It was a lockout, and they ended in time in 2022. They got the 162 games in, but it was amazing. I do think the rise of social media has changed that calculation a little bit, to where a lot of fans now side with the players, at least on social media. So much so that I don't know, I try to be even handed in my coverage, and I got a lot of social media hate from people thinking I was siding with the owners, and trust me, if you had asked the union at that time, if you had asked the owners at that time, they would not have said Ken is siding with the owners. Like, I was just calling balls and strikes.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. And I really hope that we don't have an elongated stoppage here, but it feels like it's probably on the horizon. And with how electric the WBC has just been, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And, baseball with the World Series last year in Game 7, it feels like this is the worst time for this to happen.
Yeah, and that's I'm sorry. I'll go. I agree with you, Will. And actually, on the flip side, I think that provides a little bit of hope. Like the more moderate, sensible people in both rooms, in the ownership room and the players' room, they're like, "Come on, like we got to figure something out here." And I do another issue that I think could help avoid that prolonged stoppage is the TV contracts. MLB has lined up these TV contracts to all end after the 2028 season, because Rob Manfred wants to incorporate more local games into the packages, and all that. Point being, a prolonged 2027 work stoppage would really hurt their negotiating position to get those deals done.
That's a great point. Mo, if, like you said, this feels like the worst time to have work stoppage. Obviously, there's never a good time for a work stoppage, right?
Right.
But that game last night, the WBC game, the U.S. and Dominican Republic, and even though it ended on a call that everybody's bitching about today, it's still captivating, right? Like, baseball has the world right now, the entire world's attention right now. It's crazy what's going on with this.
you got, I think I was reading something, they were saying 50 all-stars, 4 or 5 MVPs playing in this tournament. It's high leverage, super intense. And like, Otani, he's got his Japan jersey on, but you know who he is, you know what he did. And over here, you got all the Venezuela guys, and then you see all of the Venezuela coaches and all of that. And then there's Pedro and all the guys from DR, and they're playing. And then you got all the USA guys, and they're all battling for this, but they're all in our league. And it's like, this is the heighten of everything, is like right here, right now. People are doing it and playing. This is a bad time. Let's just be clear. I'm all for the players. I ain't never going to change that. That's just the way that I am. It's been, the union's been great to me, great for my family. But man, it's so exciting right now. It really would be a shame if we got to go through this. So I'm hoping they could get something done.
Ken, do you think it's going to come down to a salary cap? Is that really what this is? Or is that just the big talking point and that's going to get thrown to the side once they get in the negotiation?
No, I think that is the $10 billion question, Will. And it is a matter of who blinks, because I think on both sides, Will, like I think, as much as the united front as the players want to present, there are players who would be okay with a salary cap, because they see what's going on. They see that top 1%, Otani, Juan Soto, Kyle Tucker, getting these enormous salaries. But like that next tier, they're not their salaries are not going up. Even someone like Pete Alonso, like his salary for his skill set, that hasn't really changed in 15 years. That's so. And that's not to say Pete doesn't want a salary. Pete wants a salary cap. I'm just giving one example. So I do think there is some sentiment on the player side, like let's listen. And on the ownership side, yes, definitely a lot of the smaller market and mid-market owners want a salary cap. But obviously the larger market teams don't want that. And I think you'll find some sensible heads even in those medium and smaller markets. So it's just a matter, again, of is it going to be the hardliners leading the way, or is it going to be the compromisers leading the way?
Mo, how did the salaries in a clubhouse affect dynamic in that front? Because I mean, obviously in this situation, it's going to, because people are going to be looking out for their own interests, even though there's a larger collective good that they're all trying to battle, right? But in a clubhouse, is anybody paying attention to that stuff, or are you like, hey man, that guy, I don't know about that contract, that's a little crazy?
No, I don't think anybody's, we've always got this pact. You don't talk about anybody's money or situation. And usually, guys are just in there playing. We're together too long to be looking at who's getting paid what. I think, when you're in a baseball clubhouse for that long, especially if you're winning, you're just trying to get guys that are all going in the same direction. I was lucky enough to make a lot of money playing ball, but I think all my teammates, at least I think so, were always very, very positive with me and Red Sox guys. Yeah. So it's I don't think it's something that is postered on the wall of what's happening. I think once you get in there, people are just playing the game.
Ken, we're going to talk about your book here in a moment, 101 Lessons from the Dugout. But I got to ask you this question. This is one thing I've been thinking about all week, getting excited for you to jump on the podcast. Who was your favorite player that you ever got to chat with, cover, and who was the most difficult, and why was it Albert Bell?
It's funny. I didn't deal much with Albert, but I almost did, because he almost became a Yankee after the 98 season. And that, Mo, you were a free agent. That was your big free agent winter, right? After 98. Yeah. That was a big winter. Gosh, I mean, it's hard to narrow it down to one player. I'll just name one who I just really loved talking to, is Hideki Matsui of the Yankees.
Wow.
Because, just such a kind person, and someone so at peace with himself and with his following and his fame. This was a guy, he had so many Japanese reporters just there to cover him, just him. That was the story. Yankees win, Matsui goes 0 for 2 with a walk. That was the story in Japan. He dealt with that so well, and he dealt with that whole contingent so well. And he told his teammates, any of them give you a problem, let me know. And he also took the time to get to know the American reporters. And yeah, Hideki did not speak great English, but he had an interpreter with him, and he just made such an effort to converse with the American reporters and kind of get to know us. So that he was my favorite. Probably the most challenging. I wish I had dealt with Albert just for the challenge of Albert. But Matt Harvey, the Mets pitcher, he comes to mind. He was just tough, look, on one hand, you want the players to read what you write. Like, you want to be read by everyone, and you want to be accountable for what you write. But, on the other hand, it's like, God, he's reading everything. I was critical of him because I did think he kind of put himself above the team at times. And even like when he was injured, recovering from Tommy John surgery, just kind of making a spectacle of himself. And then there was a whole thing where he almost didn't pitch in the postseason for the Mets in 2015. So, Matt was tough. But again, I do kind of give him credit for taking the interest in what I was writing and for standing up for himself.
Mo, I think it's crazy. I was listening to this. I was watching this clip from I can't remember it was one of the NBA podcasts, and they were talking about Jeremy Lin in New York and what a wild scene that was. It was such a crazy flash moment in sports, right? And all this international media coming in, and it's all this pressure on this kid who came out of nowhere. But MLB is different in that every clubhouse has international reporters in some way, shape, or kind. There's guys who don't speak English. There's guys coming from other parts of the world. Mo, as a player, is that difficult to navigate when, those guys coming in and they have a story and it's about one guy, but they're going to come ask you about that guy because that's the only thing that their listener viewership cares about when that's what they're writing about?
Again, when you're in a clubhouse, to win, and I never won a World Series. We've had some good years, but even in that time, you don't care if a guy can speak English. If he can field, hit, and throw. You figure out a way to communicate with him if he can help you win a baseball game. And I think, we're somewhat like, I don't think we're not as tough as the hockey guys, but we have that kind of a mindset where we're all together, and whatever you can do, to help us win a ball game, I want you here. And that's I think pretty much through how it works.
And that's actually a great life lesson, right? Be able to accept anyone. If you're willing to work with someone, doesn't matter if they're different from you. Look at that. That's a professional transition right there, Ken. 101 lessons from the dugout. Book just came out. I got to skim and scan through it. There's some really cool stuff in there. How did this come about, and why did you decide to write this book?
So Will, thank you for asking, and thank you for reading. This came about because my literary agent, Lisa Leshney, represents myself as well as my co-author for this book, whose name is Harley Roquebart, who I'm betting neither of you have ever heard of because he's never written a word about baseball before. Harley is a retired pediatrician and parenting expert. And he loves baseball and softball, coached his kids and his grandkids. And he came up with this idea of all the different ways you can learn about life through your adventures and experiences in baseball and softball. So Harley wrote the first draft, and he wrote it from the perspective of someone who's dealt with young people his whole life and their parents and the coaches. And he said, Ken, why don't you come in, be my co-author, and kind of infuse the book with your knowledge of having the game at the highest having covered the game at the highest level. So it was a nice blending of perspectives, and I'm very pleased with it. Yeah, I mean, Will, you talked about the inclusivity there. So chapter 7, pinch hitters and pinch runners include others, speak up for friends. And that's, when you're in the starting lineup, but your friend isn't, look after your friend, make sure, they're, give them pep talk and make sure they're getting in the game as a defensive replacement or pinch hitter or pinch runner. And same in any walk of life, right? In school, if someone doesn't get picked, for the school play, have them help out, with scenery or whatever. So the idea of carrying these lessons throughout every aspect of your life.
I've always said, our game is the essence of life. I've been saying that for years now. The fact that, you got this book is just tremendous. I mean, how hard we work every day to master something, but people don't understand, how many times you do it. The law of averages. Baseball's your greatness and the law of averages are very, very low. You know what I mean? And this is the essence. How do you handle a strikeout? How do you handle an error? How do you pick up your teammates? How do you do all these things where negativity is at the pinnacle of the sport, and how you absorb that and help others is what the game is all about, which is exactly what life is all about. I tell people all the time, like I really don't understand racism. Like, I don't get it. I go, I'm in a clubhouse. I'm listening to country music, Spanish music, rock, hip hop, jazz. I know every music genre there is to know, in life. Why? Because those are the guys that you'll have to get along with. So what happens when we get out in the world? What's the problem? But baseball with its with the essence of life and teaching, and then just the collaboration of all people in one place, and knowing I know every country music there is to know. I've heard it once or twice, and I start, I even be humming along, and my son's like, "Yo, how do you know that song?" I said, "Because I've been in a clubhouse. One day, if we get there, you'll know we did."
That's all. I mean, like you said, a microcosm of life, baseball, right? I mean, it's in Ken. I've always had this theory that if you took everybody and made them go experience a different part of the country, a different culture for even 6 months in their formative years, we'd have a much more inclusive society. And I'm sure, that's just one chapter in the book, right? But all those little lessons that you get in baseball can be translated over into everyday life. And I think we'd all be a little bit better off if we were following along with some of that stuff. If we're all humming along the country like Mo.
Amen. Amen.
So what is your, the target audience for the book, if you were like, hey, this is exactly who I think this would be perfect for, who's the pitch to?
Well, we wrote this with our target audience being young people ages 12 and up, and their parents and coaches. And it's written in that language. There's a lot of references to school, a lot of references to your parents. But what I've really been pleased about is just the reaction it's getting from all demographics. I mean, I was blessed enough. So David Wright wrote the foreword. Mo, were you his teammate briefly?
Man, I missed that guy. I've heard nothing but great things about him. And
okay.
I never got to play with him, but
never got to play with David.
What a great guy I hear about.
Yeah. And then, so we have endorsements, blurbs from Reggie Jackson, Joe Girardi, Bernie Williams, and a few other folks. So just the reception I've gotten, even from those people, has been so heartening to me that I showed them, back before we published, I showed each of them some of the writing. I said, what do you think? Would you be on board for this? And they all said yes. So that's been very rewarding.
That's really cool. Very, very cool. 101 lessons from the dugout. Available everywhere, right?
Available at your bookstore near you, Amazon, and then the publishing website is Bloomsbury.
Fantastic. All right, so let's jump to this WBC last night. I got to get your take here, both you guys. What a roller coaster week for USA, right? I mean, from the DeRosa, I don't know if you want to call it a flub in the media, or if you really did not know that his team was not in the semis yet, leaving control out of their own hands, to that win last night, which was as gutsy and as ballsy and as clutch as you could possibly get. Ken, if you're covering that team, I mean, you're feeling the ups and downs of it too. Just imagine going through that week with them.
I'll tell you what, Will, I mean, what transpired in that first round was insane. I mean, I knew D-Row, so I wrote for the Bergen County Record in New Jersey, which is where Mark grew up. So I just missed him. Like, I was covering high school sports. He had just graduated high school, but he was the quarterback for the University of Pennsylvania. Right. He was such a big deal for our readership that every Penn home game, we would send a reporter down to Philly to cover the game just for him. It was like Matsui, so we covered it just for him. So but man, oh man, I mean, to say we punched our ticket and then to talk about the partying the night before and then to not play all those guys.
Guys, it's crazy.
Warming up Kershaw. So it seemed like more than misspeaking. It seemed like he didn't realize that, so I would have just been digging on that. And that, and then to play the mighty DR and, how well they had been playing. And then, to have that thrilling win last night. My God, exactly. a roller coaster ride and so much to write about.
Yeah.
Mo, what'd you think of Skeens last night? I thought that was as gutsy of and it looked like he didn't even want to come out. He was ready to keep going. I'm sure the Pirates organization was like, get him the hell out of that game. But Skeens, I mean, besides that early home run, didn't get rattled. He pretty much shoved yesterday.
I just saw the best out there competing at such a high level, man. And, Paul was firing. It was, you could see that USA coming out of their blood, their blood, sweat, and tears, trying to do what they got to do. We got to win this thing. Like for DeRosa, you got to win. You got to win tomorrow. So this thing just becomes like a flub, as you would say, and we misspoke. I don't care what it is. If we win this tomorrow, then everything's off the hook and we can move on. And that's the kind of things that I think about. Like, man, you don't want to be remembered, in that situation. But damn it, what a performance! We got guys coming out of bullpen. I wouldn't want to face any of them guys. They were throwing petroleum with breaking balls, fork balls. I'm calling the pitches, sitting there like, wow. And I actually think that that fastball, they could talk about, hey, it was a ball and pitch game. I think he was throwing so hard that when the umpire saw it up, he just didn't realize how hard it was going to break. I wouldn't have been able to take that pitch. I would have been swinging at that pitch. A guy throwing 100 miles an hour. So whatever. That's our win. We're one win away, and let's finish the job is what I'm hoping for.
Ken, I'm glad Mo brought that up, of playing to kind of make that the mistake Zero made a footnote in what could be an amazing storyline. Because if you think about it the other way, right? Think about if they didn't win that game. What has been the knock on USA is we haven't taken this serious enough, right? The Pacific countries take it seriously. The Latin countries take it seriously. The USA is just kind of there. People say some of the stuff like the Aaron Judge speech, some of it's performative, like they're not really into it. I thought it was really cool, and I agree with you, Mo. I think they were trying to win that to show, hey, we want that to be a footnote. That is not going to define what we are as a team here.
And it's not going to define Mark. Like, you hear so much great stuff about him as a guy and as a dude, as a baseball game. I just don't want him to be defined from that.
No, and he would have been, Bo. If Italy hadn't done them the favor of beating Mexico and they had been eliminated, that would have haunted Mark DeRosa for
the rest of his life.
Long time. Yeah, very long time.
Did you think it was a controversial choice to make him the manager of this team? And a lot of people were like, he's on MLB Network. Why should he be the manager of this team? Did you think it was controversial?
Yeah, he managed it last time too, and they got to the finals. But you nailed it, Will. There's always been this, I don't know if cloud is the word, but something around Team USA that they're not taking it as seriously as these other countries are. So yeah, but like Team USA, they've tried everything. They tried. I covered the very first one when the manager was Buck Martinez, and Buck was essentially a broadcaster. He managed the Blue Jays for I think a year and a half or something. And then it was Davey Johnson, may he rest in peace. Then it was Joe Torre. Leland was the one who won the whole thing, and then D-Row the last two times. So they've kind of gone all over the map. They've tried the grizzled veterans and the and D-Row, I think they just thought it'd be high energy and probably recruit some guys, which he did this time. But yeah, I could understand, you could certainly try to pick someone who's actually done more managing.
Mm-hmm. I think what's cool is the storyline now isn't that. The storyline now is how healthy is the game of baseball, not just from a USA standpoint, but from an overall standpoint. When you have these young stars, look at the guys who hit the home runs last night. Roman Anthony, Gunnar Henderson. These are young bucks on the USA squad. You look at the guys who are hitting home runs for DR throughout the tournament. Yes, there's established stars there too, but there's some names just seem like we're going to be talking about these guys for a long time to come.
Yeah, for sure. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Like, my Red Sox game, Roman Anthony, Gunnarsson, there's, all these guys coming up, even the guys on the Italian team that are somewhat prospects with, prospects coming up, and, Jack Caglione, all those, all of that, those. So the game is super healthy. Plus, on the international side in South America with all those players, the game is super, super healthy. And that's why, the three of us sitting there thinking about some type of stoppage would be devastating due to the fact of what's happening right now and what we see. And I'll always maintain this, especially this year. I know we're fighting tooth and nails for the names on our jerseys, but all those players, they know each other. They're all friends and they play in the MLB. And I think that's what the greatness of it is.
Ken, we talk about these big names, but I got one of my favorite things about the WBC is you just get these random ass players that get put in the game against a superstar, right? Like, and they're, some of them aren't even in, in major leagues yet. And one of my favorites, just because I'm here in Cleveland, is Tugboat Wilkinson. I don't know if you know, he played for Team Canada. He threw a couple innings and he just throws junk, right? It's just junk. It's crazy stuff he's throwing out there. But to watch that guy go up against that lineup, or Contreras' kid, the 17-year-old coming out throwing 100 miles, what we talked about in the last spot, I think that's one of the most fascinating things about this. And I saw a funny tweet the other day. It was like, this is so-and-so. He plays for Team Italy. He's a truck driver most of the time, and he's about to face off against Shohei Ohtani. You know what I mean? Like, it's just wild that some of these storylines that get put in front of you.
Yeah, it's funny. I have to admit, I was slow to warm to the WBC. I admired its ambition, but I thought it was really taking away from Major League Baseball's core product of the championship season, and really cheapening spring training. And then when guys get hurt, it impacts the championship season. But I tip of the cap to it. It has defeated its critics with the rosters this year, as Mo said, all these All-Stars, MVPs. But the one thing I did love from the very beginning was exactly what you're talking about. Well, was just these random guys. Or I also like the guys like have been retired for years and just popped up to play in the tournaments. I remember, Bernie Williams played in the 2009 WBC for Team Puerto Rico when he hadn't played in the majors since 2006.
Yeah, that's crazy. Mo, and Mo, I don't know if do you feel it? Mo, you brought up in the last podcast about possibly doing this at the All-Star break instead of at the beginning of the season. I think there's something to that, Mo. I really like that idea. And I can't tell you how many people talked to me this last week about you bringing that up. And they're like, I love it. I think that's what they should do. I
was just saying that, one of my GM friends that didn't come from me was saying, extend the All-Star game, All-Star week to 2 weeks. Now everybody's healthy. Nobody's worrying about pitch counts. You can, and he was like, man, we could use the 2 weeks off on our side. And now you can go out there and go at it the way that you want to go at it. And I think, listen, you need a Paul Skeens to go home and say, man, that was electric. We need to do that again. We need Paul Schoolball to go home and say, hey, this was good. We got to really make this happen. You need that. And I think once you see, I wore a USA jersey in college just for a tiny, I went to Taipei, Taiwan. There was nothing better than that. To be on this level, it's got to be energizing. Like, it's got to be something that you go, man, if I'm willing and able and healthy, I want to do this again. And we should try to really get our best. So hopefully it works out like that.
Ken, any more books in your future? What do you got in the works? Not to put the pressure on you. I'm sure that you sound like your publisher. Yeah.
I have a few ideas, and I've just had some thoughts with a few people. But honestly, I'm still in the book tour phase for this one. It's my first one, and I'm just very happy to have it out. So we'll see where this one takes me.
101 Lessons from the Dugout. Ken Davidoff and Harley. How do you say the last name?
Rothbart. Not Rothbart. Sounds too much like rat fart. So Rothbart.
I'm sure he got a lot of that in elementary school.
Yes, he did.
Go check it out. Great book. Ken, thank you so much for jumping on. We appreciate it. Great conversation. And I'm with you. I thought the WBC was goofy when they first announced this thing. I thought nobody would ever going to buy into it. And I could not have been more wrong about something. I was so locked in last night in that game. Everybody I knew was locked in that game. It's a fun time to be a baseball fan.
Yeah.
Ken, good to see you, man.
You too, Mo. Thanks to both of you for your time and for the platform.
And anything you need, we're here to help you. I love the WBC. I got tickets, at Marlins Stadium. So, I've been sending everybody. I haven't been feeling good, so I haven't been going. But I'm going to make it there, tomorrow night. But this thing is exceptional. And I think we should all be pushing to get our best guys out there in the right situations and wear that USA with pride and try to bring it home all the time. But great book. Good luck to you. You need me? You need us? You need me? Just let me know and I'm here for you.
You're the best, Mo. Thank you. And Will, thanks for your time and pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, appreciate it, Ken. Good luck with everything.